Alright, so I'm jumping from one underwhelming Batman movie to another underwhelming Batman movie, but these movies could not be more different in tone and in execution, so let's talk about it. Batman Forever. Now, Batman Forever came out in 1995 and is the third of the 90s era, or Tim Burton era Batman movies, except this one is not directed by Tim Burton. After all the backlash that Batman Returns got, with it being dark and disturbing and definitely not safe for kids, this one is a direct heel turn from that into something a lot lighter, a lot campier, a lot more bright, colorful, optimistic. The Dark Knight is not really the Dark Knight as much as he is the Bright Knight. He's a standard. As much as he is the Bright Knight, he stands for truth, justice, works with the police. He's a duly sworn officer of the law. Now, I don't know if that part is true, but it is definitely giving a lot of Adam West campy Batman vibes, where they were duly sworn officers of the law. But here, it's a little ambiguous, and admittedly, I don't hate this movie like a lot of people hate this movie. A lot of people hate this, and if I'm being honest, I feel like Batman kind of got destroyed by Batman Returns well before this movie came out, and this one is just a response to that. Now, it's not a response that I think resonates with most people. I feel like Batman is at its most popular when it is dark and brooding and mature, and it takes itself fairly seriously. The Christopher Nolan movies are exhibit A, B, and C of how that formula works with audiences, and it works with the character of Batman. But it is interesting looking back and seeing these Joel Schumacher directed Batman movies as not just a complete cinematic disaster like a lot of people claim, but as throwbacks to that campy 60s era Batman that a lot of people do still enjoy. I still enjoy that for what it was. It went over the top, it went big, it went goofy, and it wasn't ashamed of it. Here you get kind of the same thing, and I think Batman Forever is actually a pretty solid Batman movie. Now, it's not great by any means, but I thoroughly enjoyed watching this one. I think there's a lot to like. For one, the cast is pretty solid. Val Kilmer, I gotta say, is a pretty solid Bruce Wayne and Batman in this. I think he, more than a lot of the other Batman actors, balanced the Bruce Wayne and Batman personas very well, where you still see the tragedy, the trauma behind his eyes, and you get his whole motivation. But when you see him as Bruce Wayne, billionaire, playboy, head of Wayne Industries, and he's in the R&D department, he feels weirdly at home. You buy that, yeah, he is the eccentric billionaire that would fund all these crazy experiments, but still keep his composure and authority as the head of the company. Even Christian Bale's Bruce Wayne persona, I never really saw as a believable head of Wayne Industries, that yeah, he could actually run this company when he's not being Batman. But Val Kilmer, in the limited screen time we have, does pull it off in a convincing way. And he's also pretty good under the cowl as Batman. Now, he's not the most intimidating Batman ever put to film. This is more of a campy, lighthearted Batman take. He cracks jokes, he gives a thumbs up to the police commissioner. He does some admittedly silly things, but he plays it in a very similar way that Adam West played it, where it's entirely straight, but still fitting into that really chaotic, over-the-top world that Joel Schumacher created. But Batman's not alone in his war on crime in this movie. He actually gets his Robin. For the first time in this series of movies, they finally bring in Robin. They talked about bringing in Robin in the first Batman movie, couldn't find a way to make it fit narratively. Then they were going to try to bring it into the second movie, still couldn't really find a way to make it work. And the way they introduce him almost works. It almost works, but it just doesn't quite get there for me. And Chris O'Donnell as Robin, I don't really see much issue with him or his performance. I think it fits in that kind of campy, heightened world. I think he does the Robin thing pretty well. He looks good in the suit. My only complaint is more the way he's written and the way he's implemented into the script. Because Bruce Wayne goes to the circus one day and sees the Flying Graysons. They all die except for Dick Grayson, Robin. So Commissioner Gordon tells Bruce Wayne, hey, you gotta take him in. And I don't really understand why a 20-something-year-old man needs to be taken in by anybody, let alone reclusive billionaire Bruce Wayne. I don't really get that, because the movie seems to be pretty confused as to how old we're supposed to believe Dick Grayson to be. They say he's a college student, so he's clearly not the little boy that Batman took in from the comics that he adopted and then taught him how to channel his anger into crime fighting to be his partner. That doesn't really apply here, because he's not a child that needs a guardian to look after him. He's a full-grown adult. He could just go do his own thing. He could go to Bloodhaven. He could just go straight to the Nightwing phase of his journey. Except this movie really wants to bring in Robin to make it feel more like the classic Adam West show, because Robin was in that. And I guess they aged him up to make the premise less silly, that he brought in a kid and now is endangering a kid to send him out into the world to fight crime and risk his life. But this movie's already leaning so hard into the camp and cheese. Just make him younger. Lean into that. It's already silly enough as it is. We don't need the grounded realism of an adult Robin to make this movie work. If anything, it just makes the movie work less. I feel like both before and after this movie, there's been a lot of trepidation from studios and writers on how to integrate Robin in a Batman story. We really haven't seen many on-screen Robins, which is a shame, because there's a lot of great storytelling potential with Robin. Some of the best Batman stories ever written have a Robin character involved in some way. But the characters that take up the most screen time in this movie and leave the biggest impression on you when you watch it are the villains. And we have two villains, again, because after Batman Returns, I guess people forgot that you could have a really good Batman story with just one main antagonist, so we gotta keep upping the stakes, we gotta add more villains. So here, we have a team up between Two-Face and the Riddler. And Two-Face is interesting here because he's played by Tommy Lee Jones, and he's already an established villain in the world of this movie. He doesn't start off the movie as District Attorney Harvey Dent, and then at some point he becomes Two-Face. No, he is Two-Face from the get-go. You only get a little bit of his backstory from the TV news bulletin showing his backstory real quick in a blink and you miss it scene, which I do appreciate, because I feel like a lot of these movies feel the need to build up the villain. They need to show the whole origin story of a villain, which in a movie this cramped, where you have multiple villains and multiple character arcs for Batman and Robin, it is nice to just cut to the chase and have the villain already be established. And Tommy Lee Jones as Two-Face is not a bad choice casting-wise. I just don't really understand what he's doing in this movie, what his direction is, what he's going for, because it is off-the-wall insanity if you actually take the time to watch Tommy Lee Jones' performance here. It is goofy beyond imagination. It's like he watched Jim Carrey and is like, I can out-silly that. And so he's just complete goofball. He's the Joker with only half of his face messed up. Which is kind of disappointing, because I would have liked to see Tommy Lee Jones as a more serious take on Two-Face. I feel like he has the acting chops to do it. He could play a really interesting Harvey Two-Face with a lot of emotion behind that. But now I guess he heard somewhere that this was harkening back to the camp of the 60s show, and so he's trying to play it up like he's Cesar Romero or somebody. I feel like as a more straight, intimidating villain that doesn't do any kind of big gestures, that is just a gangster, he's just in it for the money and has this revenge quest against Batman, he could be so intimidating and so memorable as that, even with the campy design of his face, making it all this pinkish purple color and the suit being all over the top. I feel like if the performance was more grounded, he could have stolen the show for this movie. He would have been easily the best thing in it. But unfortunately, he just plays it like he's in a Saturday morning cartoon. Which brings me to Jim Carrey as the Riddler. And yeah, Jim Carrey as the Riddler, it's kind of an obvious casting choice, which is not a bad choice by any means. It's just so obvious that you get exactly what you think you're going to get from Jim Carrey as a Riddler, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. He plays it like an upgraded 90s version of Frank Gorshin. And if Frank Gorshin is your point of reference for the perfect Riddler portrayal for all time, Jim Carrey's performance will be perfect for you. Because for a long time, I loved the Frank Gorshin Riddler. I thought he was a great Riddler, and I still think he's a great Riddler. Although as I've gotten older and a little more cynical, I've come to appreciate the Batman the Animated Series and the Arkham games interpretation of the Riddler, where he's more of a methodical game master, where he does all these puzzles and death traps that are actually intended to destroy Batman, while at the same time proving his intellectual superiority over Batman. I feel like that's just a more interesting and deeper interpretation of the Riddler. But that's clearly not the direction that Joel Schumacher wanted to take it. So as a upgraded Frank Gorshin, I think Jim Carrey's fine. He actually has a few funny lines every so often. He has great physical comedy. He's got a great acrobatic performance as the Riddler. Although I do wish his costume design was a little less skin tight in some scenes. Actually, the outfit that he wears when you first see him as the Riddler, I think is perfect. It looks so good. It's the suit and the hat and the mask. It all looks fantastic. I don't understand why they didn't just have him wear that the entire time, because that was peak Riddler. It was awesome. And I feel like Jim Carrey's over-the-top performance, which it does go very over-the-top in some scenes, would feel a little more at home in this universe if Tommy Lee Jones was not also doing the exact same thing, really yucking it up for the camera. I feel like if Tommy Lee Jones played a little more straight, they could have had a really nice balance as a duo going on. But as a unit, it's just this cacophonous overacting that is just in your face, and it's just kind of unpleasant. The more you see the two of them together interacting, the more you're just not having that much fun. Separately, I feel like they work a lot better. The opening few scenes where Batman's fighting Two-Face are actually a lot of fun, and then the few scenes where you see the Riddler on his own with his backstory and everything are actually pretty well executed, but when you put them together, it just doesn't work. And I think that's also because the motivation to bring them together is pretty weak. Thematically, they don't have a lot in common. Personality-wise, they don't have a lot in common. And motivation, they definitely don't really have a lot in common, except that one wants to kill Bruce Wayne and the other one wants to kill Batman. And they eventually find out it's one and the same. And up until that point where it's revealed, you just don't understand why they're working together. Why does Two-Face put up with this buffoon? But by far the worst aspect of this movie is the love story in here. Which, can we just get a Batman movie where Batman does not have a love interest? Can we just try it once? Because I'm pretty sure we haven't gotten any Batman movie where he has just been Batman against a villain. Maybe he has a few allies, but I'm pretty sure every Batman movie, either Batman or Bruce Wayne or both, has fallen in love with some woman. And it's really funny too that it's never the same person from movie to movie. It's always someone new. So the fact that Bruce Wayne is willing to stop being Batman, to shut down the whole Batcave, retire, just because Dr. Chase Meridian is in love with him, I just don't buy it. Their relationship is brand new to this movie. She's a completely original character to this film. It's not like there's a long backstory in the comics with this character where you can be like, okay, they're just pulling from that lore. No, it's Nicole Kidman as a psychiatrist that's got the hots for Batman because, I don't know, she likes bats, she likes the black rubber, she's kind of weird. The writing for her is not the best. It's quite forced and awkward, and it doesn't do her character any favors. And I don't blame Nicole Kidman necessarily for that. It's really in the writing. Some of that dialogue, I don't think anybody would be able to make work. But also, Nicole Kidman's pretty forgettable here too. She doesn't really bring anything as an actress to make you remember her character. It just doesn't leave much of an impression. And her flip-flopping from being interested in Batman to being interested in Bruce Wayne to then realizing they're one and the same and then loving both, it's just so convoluted, and it leads to more drama than you really need in a movie like this. Aside from the villains teaming up and wreaking havoc, which in any movie should be enough to propel the plot, you also have the Dick Grayson plot. Dick Grayson has a vendetta against Two-Face. Two-Face killed his parents, just like how in this continuity, I guess, the Joker killed his parents, and Bruce Wayne's trying to keep him out of this life. He's trying to keep him from going after Two-Face. And there is one scene in the movie that really does work. I think it might be my favorite scene in the whole movie. And it's when Bruce and Dick have a heart-to-heart in the Batcave about when he goes and he kills Two-Face. What then? He'll go find another face and another until you realize that your whole life has been wasted in this search for revenge, and the anger doesn't go away, it grows. And I'm butchering it, but the way it's written, the way Val Kilmer delivers it, it sounds like he's speaking from experience, which makes Batman more of an interesting character, and Robin actually learning that lesson throughout the movie makes him a really interesting character. You do see growth with him throughout this movie. So really, that should have been the crux of this whole movie. Have the villains do their villainous scheming, and have most of the scenes out of costume focus on the relationship between Bruce and Dick Grayson. They're the dynamic duo. If you don't buy into their dynamic together, their relationship, how are you going to care about Batman or Robin, or whether or not they live or die or win or lose or any of it? Because that's the core of Batman and really is the core of this movie. And the movie just doesn't seem all that interested in developing that and bringing that to the forefront. Instead, it just has all these different side characters, side plots, romances, all these things going on, and bright lights and fancy production design to make you kind of forget that the movie is pretty hollow. And that's why I do have mixed feelings on this, because on the one hand, it is a hollow popcorn movie experience, but it is a fun experience. It's the kind of movie that you can kind of turn your brain off and just sink into the camp of the whole situation, laugh at it in some scenes, laugh with it in other scenes, and just be swept up in the extravagance of it. This looks like a very expensive movie. Unlike Batman and Robin, where clearly all the money went to the star power involved, here you can clearly tell they spend good money to make the bat suits look good. As nipply as they are, they look good. They look clean. They look like film-ready bat suits and Robin suits, and really all the suits in this movie, aside from Jim Carrey's spandex, look good. Two-Face's makeup looks really good, and I wasn't the least bit surprised to discover that that's Rick Baker's work because it does look really good. Even if it isn't the most realistic interpretation of what that side of the face would look like if it got melted with acid. But in going for a more cartoony, campy look, it does work. It's really clean makeup, it's memorable. This was the definitive Two-Face look for a long time for me growing up. And as silly as it is, I do appreciate the work and craft that went into making it. And that same craft and care is put into the sets, the backgrounds, the big neon lights shooting into the sky, which again, we're going for a more campy vibe, so I completely welcome that in this interpretation of Gotham City. I think it works. I think it's interesting. You can clearly see there's different gang activity going on the lower levels. So I'd be interested to explore more of that. It does kind of suck you in with the extravagance of all of it. And that's pretty much my thoughts on Batman Forever. It's probably the most middle-of-the-road Batman movie you're gonna find. There's nothing that great about it. There's nothing all that horrible in it either. There's actually a few really good moments, and it's got a handful of really dumb moments too. But I feel like most of the hate that this movie gets is actually more deserving in Batman and Robin. But looking at this movie as the first attempt of a Joel Schumacher directed Batman movie, something a little campier, a little more lighthearted, while at the same time still bringing in things from Batman lore that have weight, that have really interesting ideas, like Robin, like Batman grappling with his repressed memories that are starting to come up. Those are interesting ideas, and when the movie slows down enough where you can actually focus on some of those moments, it's not bad. But now I turn over to you guys. What do you think about Batman Forever? It's a movie that not a lot of people really talk about. People either talk about the 89 Batman or Batman and Robin as the two extremes. And the movies in between don't really get a lot of discussion. But whatever you think, let me know in the comments. And if you like this video, be sure to give it a like and subscribe for more content and hit the notification bell to be notified every time I upload a video. And as always, I'm Colby. This is my Nerdy Talk, and I'll see you in the next video.